Annie. At 7 o'clock the next morning, the body of Annie Dewani was found, slumped over the back seat of Tongo's taxi, a bullet wound in her neck.
I rang Shrin, and he could not talk to me. All he was able to do was cry and cry, and all he could say was, "They've taken Annie from me," that he has lost Annie. And I could not understand exactly what had happened, but he did say at that time that they found Annie's body and she has been shot.
The police say there was no evidence of sexual assault, a claim now disputed by the Dewani family. They also insist there's evidence Annie had been shot during a scuffle rather than it being a deliberate execution.
Police in South Africa have begun a murder hunt after a woman on honeymoon with her British husband was killed in a suspected carjacking. They've been named as Shrin and Annie Dewani from Bristol. Officials are now warning tourists to be prepared for potential danger if they go into unfamiliar areas.
South Africa relies heavily on its holiday industry. It's been suggested the news that a tourist had been killed placed the authorities under pressure to secure a quick conviction. Remember, the country had just staged a successful World Cup. There was real optimism that it would lead to an influx of visitors. But once again, the country found itself portrayed as a crime hotspot, one where hitmen lurked in the shadows, ready to pounce on unsuspecting tourists.
While we do have high crime levels in this country, and certainly Cape Town is not immune to that, it's very rare that you get an incident like that where you have a tourist being murdered in a township. For the most part, the townships are safe. The key there is they're safe during the day. What you'll hear most tour operators saying, you don't go to these places at night. It was common knowledge, and this is what everyone knows in Cape Town.
How angry are people in Cape Town of what took place here?
There were mixed responses. Obviously shock, but with that shock came anger amongst some parts of the communities, especially in Gugulethu and Khayelitsha and other townships. They felt that due to what they saw at that stage, the naivety of foreign tourists, that it was going to do their business harm, and specifically the domestic tourist industry in those particular townships, which is still very nascent. It's still on the way up. It's not very formalized, so they do really rely on every bit of business they get.
With this pressure building locally and the eyes of the world's media focused on Cape Town, the police needed results. Within days of the killing, 2 men, Zolili Mungeni and Zwamadoda Kwabi, were arrested and charged. For those businesses relying on the influx of tourists into the area, it was a vital breakthrough.
I think when the police reported the leads and then you arrest within a week or two, it kind of settled the thing, and people were comfortable that our police system, our criminal justice system is working. So I think that's very important, that I think the case comes to a close now, because I think there are still some unanswered questions, and we hope it's not for our country's image, but also for the tourism industry, very important that comes to an end, yes.
But things were about to get a lot more complicated. At first, Shrin Dewani wasn't a suspect and was allowed to fly home on November the 17th.
All I could see was a person buckled and completely broken down. And when I met him, when he saw me, he just hugged me and he cried. And I cried with him.
6,000 miles away, Zola Tongo was arrested, and on December the 7th, here at Western Cape High Court, he made his explosive confession. And further allegations were to follow, suggestions that all was not well with the couple's relationship, claims over Mr. Dewani's sexuality, and news that the South African police were investigating a possible link with a previous murder. Publicist Max Clifford, who'd been hired to defend Shrin Dewani in the media, quickly denied all the allegations.
The man is suffering from trauma, the man is bereaved, devastated, and on top of everything else, he's getting all these accusations thrown at him on a daily basis, as I say, most of which we've been able to knock back straight away.
The press to that gutter left are digging deep, and whatever they can find, whether it's true or not. They'll just throw at him in order to sell their newspapers. That's the whole and soul about it.
It was even claimed the allegations were fabricated to protect South Africa's reputation and place the blame squarely on a foreign visitor.
I don't think there's any truth in the suggestion that the allegations that's out there to protect the tourist trade is true. I think it's rubbish. The police and the criminal justice system operates completely independently of the tourism industry or the tourism ministry. There might be discussions at cabinet level, but they operate totally independently.
Following Tongo's plea bargain, Shrien Dewani was arrested by police in the UK and moves to have him extradited began. As part of their case, the South African authorities said that hotel CCTV footage existed showing Shrien Dewani meeting Tongo on the Tuesday after the killing to pay him R1,000, about £90.
The Dewanis are quite confident that the timings are coinciding with exactly what Shrien has said, and that Shrien was paying off the taxi money for which Tongo took them around and was due to him. So it is a perfectly legitimate exchange which Shrien has done.
Shrien Dewani was eventually given bail by the High Court, but with strict conditions that he must wear an electronic tag and report regularly to Southmead Police Station. On Thursday, he's due to appear in court again for the next stage in the process that will decide if he has to return to South Africa to stand trial. From the beginning of proceedings, Annie's family have insisted Shrien Dewani should return to Cape Town to clear his name in court. Her uncle made an early plea for Shrien Dewani not to resist extradition.
My message would be every day, this case is not over, it's torture. So please don't prolong this anymore. Just come down here, let the court decide. That's our wish. Every day is a torture for us. I really mean it.
But can Shrien Dewani really expect a fair trial in South Africa? Concerns have already been raised about how the police went about their investigation, with the two suspects accused of being the hitmen now claiming their confessions were forced out of them.
Can you just tell me what your client has told you?
Basically, his instructions to me are that soon after he was arrested by the police, he was tortured, and that involved use of a plastic bag to suffocate him and the physical assault on his body. Any information that is obtained in such a manner is inadmissible in a court of law. And what that means is that if they are relying on that piece of evidence to show he's guilty, and the court will make a ruling that that information is inadmissible, they can no longer therefore rely on that piece of evidence to prove he's guilty. It's a practice that is unlawful, and it makes one wonder as to whether there are any other irregular methods that the police would engage on in trying to crack a case. In other words, investigate it so as to have it prosecuted.
The South African police have declined to comment on the allegations. Meanwhile, one former High Court judge in Cape Town has warned Shrien Dewani he has little hope of being dealt with fairly by the South African judicial system.
It's likely that the review of the criminal justice administration conducted by the South African government itself and presented to our parliament in August 2008 will be raised by Mr. Dewani's team, because in that review the concession was made that the criminal justice administration in South Africa is dysfunctional. The police are not functioning as they should. The government has chosen to put politicians in charge of the police instead of professional policemen. And as we know in Mr. Dewani's case, he was allowed to return to Britain on the basis that he is not a suspect in the case. And he's now become a suspect at a later stage and made the chief of police look a little foolish for letting him go home And that has expressed itself in unfortunate comments in which our chief of police has called Mr. Dewani a monkey who arranged for his wife to be murdered in South Africa, which is prejudging the case and hardly the function of a professional policeman.
Paul Hoffman also has serious concerns about how the judge in the case has accepted Zola Tongo's plea bargain.
And that puts pressure on any other judge in his division to uphold that plea bargain, because if the basis of the plea bargain is false, it does not reflect well. But this was done at a time when those co-accused who have been arrested alleged that they were being tortured, and at a time when Mr. Dewani is sitting in Bristol and denying that he had any role in the matter at all. So it seems that it was done with what we could call unseemly haste.
Our constitution guarantees our citizens, resident, even foreign nationals who appear before our courts a fair trial, a right to be represented by a legal practitioner, a right to be presumed innocent until proven otherwise, a right to lead and to adduce evidence and to challenge any evidence, and even to be represented in your own trial. Our courts are independent and are subject to the Constitution and the law. So, as far as we are concerned, Mr. Dewani, if he comes before a competent court in South Africa, will receive a fair trial.
The BBC understands Shrien Dewani's family is not ruling out doing a deal with the South African authorities for a voluntary return, but certain conditions would have to be in place, including a guarantee of bail up to the point of final appeal if one is needed.
It is for Shrien's legal team and the South African authorities to discuss this and agree a mutually agreed program. There are certain issues and questions and guarantees which must be answered and given, such as if Shrien had to go to South Africa, would he be given bail? If he is not given bail, would he be held in custody in one of the notorious jails in Cape Town? And if he is held in custody, what guarantees can someone give that a plastic bag will not be held over put over his head? These are real fears.
Well, one of the first things that will have to be decided is whether or not he is given bail pending the trial. If he's not given bail, then like so many other awaiting trial prisoners, he will be put into our overcrowded, unhealthy and dysfunctional correctional services system. If he goes down, he's going to be subjected to cruel and unusual punishment by European standards, and certainly being put in an overcrowded cell with rapists who are suffering from HIV/AIDS is not what one would expect of a person convicted in a European court.
Whether Shrien Dewani will ultimately put his version of what happened that night to a South African court will be decided over the coming months. In the meantime, there remain so many unanswered questions about the death of Annie Dewani. Retracing the last 2 days of her life, you're just left with an even greater sense of bewilderment. Bewilderment at what really happened that night. What led to the death of this innocent young woman? Well, that's it for this week, but Inside Out will be back at the same time next Monday with more real-life stories from close to home. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.